if you were dealing with someone, like, would you want someone to keep on like rolling around the edges of not actually getting to the point? And I think I would like to just know so we can move on and fix it, and we didn't waste 3 hours when it would have taken a half hour.
Right. Like, I don't need to, have the most perfect answer solution. And I think where this also goes awry is, yes, personality clashes, but when you give that disclaimer up front, like, this is my personality, this is what you can expect from me. You're giving them those expectations clearly right up front.
Welcome to the Leading Lane podcast for real estate pros by real estate pros with your hosts, Ashley Frederick and Stephen Birch. If you're looking for an honest, authentic, and raw perspective, you found it.
All right, welcome to the Leading Lane podcast. Something that I've been told my entire life is that I'm too blunt. I'm too to the point. And I actually used to think that this was a bad thing. And so I tried for many, many years to tiptoe around. And that actually was extremely difficult. And now I don't care. I'm to the point. I'm blunt. I speak what I think. And you always know where you stand with me. So when we're going through this topic, Ashley goes, I'd much rather have somebody be blunt with me. Why is that, Ashley? Why would you much rather have somebody be blunt with you and to the point?
So that we can just get to the solution faster, like less time, right? If we're not blunt, I feel like there's so much extra time spent on the fluff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get lost on the fluff, where if we're just direct and to the point, like many times it will cut the fluff out and it can just get us to where we need to be. And then we all move on, and then things are moving faster, because I like to move at the speed of light. So if we can keep on the blunt and the forwardness, we're not wasting time with the fluffiness.
So how is it? And it's funny because when we were on the couples podcast, both your husband and my husband, they both like to tell us the whole story and all of the backstory from when they were just, the wee little bit tyke, and we talked about, we want bullet points, right? Like, so how is it that in business, like, we still have to be able to provide good customer service and making sure that we're kind. And I think that's a point right there, is being blunt is a lot of times mistaken for being unkind to people, and that's totally not true. So how do you make sure, when you're dealing with different individuals and their personalities and whatnot, how do you still deliver the kindness and customer service but get to the point?
Yeah, I think that one is, a lot of times I'll actually tell my clients from the day one, like, I'll be like, I'm normally just pretty frank. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for you. If you want someone to sugarcoat it for you, I'm probably not the best option for you. I'll still make it rounded for you so that we get to the point. But I'm just like, I normally tell them, like, my goal is so that you know what you're doing, what your expectations are, when you need to be where. Same with when I go through someone's house when they're getting it ready, I'll normally say, like, I'm very blunt. Nothing is personal. This is what I want you to do with your house. And 9 times out of 10 people will say, well, like, I would want you to be blunt and open with me. And I think it's just like, there are certain times when you need to be blunt, and there's also certain times when you're in a transaction and okay, so maybe the bluntness might not work right now. So being able to gauge those people. So there's always times in a transaction where you have to make time for listening, make time for concerns. I think, like, when you're getting to know people, get to know their families, those types of things. But for me, like, when we're in the thick of everything, we're in the offers, we're in the negotiations, the more straightforward we can be, the less I feel like that there is confusion, and the less uncertainty that either a buyer or a seller feels. So instead of me trying to, not hurt a seller's feelings with what maybe somebody might be asking, I just think I lead it with, so not the best news that we have, but here's the news and here are the options, versus, why did the inspector say this? Or I don't agree with what the inspector said, or trying to add that extra, I think it's fluff, but it's also like our own feelings. So many agents throw their feelings into a transaction, and that makes things not well. I mean, anytime you can feel like when the buyer or an agent will be like, well, my buyers, or, this, you can tell that they're putting their energy into it, and all that does is derail everyone. So I think that, by me explaining to them that I'm going to be upfront with them and not sugarcoat it for them, I think that people appreciate that. Then I think they also know that when they are talking to me, they know that it's not fluff. They know that I'm already to the point, direct. And even in emails, like I've gotten, thanks to Chat GPT, I've gotten better with, pinpointing emails, like I'm going to respond and I'm going to literally like highlight, like, these are the next 3 things I need you to do and send, right? Instead of like, I think that maybe we should do this. And I think if you were to like put it back on yourself, if you were dealing with someone, like, would you want someone to keep on like rolling around the edges of not actually getting to the point? And I think I would like to just know so we can move on and fix it, and we didn't waste 3 hours when it would have taken a half hour.
Right. Like, I don't need to, have the most perfect answer solution. And I think where this also goes awry is, yes, personality clashes, but when you give that disclaimer up front, like, this is my personality, this is what you are, you can expect from me. You're giving them those expectations clearly right up front, and so they're not blindsided being inside the transaction or anything else. But I also think here, when, like, for me, it's the frustration of the slow moving side of the people. Like, okay, we got fluff plus we got slow, right? Like, we have fluffy and slowy over here, and I want to get shit done, let's go. And they have to also understand that I don't have to adapt always just to them, like, adapt to me as well. Like, this is a two-way street type of thing. And I also feel that when you're throwing in fluff and you're trying to skirt around or beat around the bush, there leaves a lot of room for misinterpretation. To where, when you are bullet point, and especially negotiations, like, what you say and how you say things matter. And so when you're trying to lessen the blow of somebody else and put your feelings into it, or heighten the blow for somebody, like, it just leaves more room for error and misinterpretation. And I don't have time for that.
Well, I think the other thing too is that when there is too much fluff, I think that when there is time for seriousness, that it might be harder for people to take that, because they have spent so much time in this like happy-go-lucky, etc. Like, we haven't had the real serious conversations yet, and now that we are, then I almost feel like that's when people can take it. Maybe that you are being unkind, because now it is time to be serious. And so I think that, like, we as realtors have the duty to, right, be like fair and honest, get to the point. And I think that if we can start transactions with, this is a business deal, I think that's the other thing is, we have to set these people up from day one. Like, we have to remember that this is not what they do for a living. This is like maybe a transaction that they'll do, 3 to 5 times in their lives potentially, right. And things change every single time that they have done it. That we have to go back to this. This is a real estate transaction. These are legally binding contracts. So there's a seriousness to real estate that I think people forget about. And I could just pull my contract, or I can just walk away, or it's not. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So I think that people forget the actual consequences of what can happen in transactions, not just for buyers and sellers, but for realtors as well. And so I do think there has to be this serious side of real estate, that people understand that these are big decisions that we're making. These are big financial decisions that we're making, safety and health decisions that we're making. And if we can be straight to the point with what these outcomes mean, I think that it just helps everyone get to the closing table faster, if you will. And I think that in the end, they would feel better. You talk about like slow moving. I think that's the other thing, is that I think sometimes when you're slow moving too, it causes times for like too much time to think. And it's not like I'm ever trying to rush people, but if you like wait, like I've had some people like they'll review an inspection for like a week. Like, there's a point where like the inspection's not changing from today's results to 3 days from now's results. yeah, many times we have to get estimates on those types of things, but instead of, I think people spend their time with the what ifs. And I was like, we like that also. That let's get to the facts first. Let's see if the seller's willing to fix these things first. If they are, then we just wasted 3 days on what if they don't versus, well, the seller had no problem fixing those repairs. I think that's the other part of like the slow moving versus the fast moving is not trying to fill people with all the extra, like, what if this doesn't work? What if they don't take this offer? What if I can't move and whatnot?
Do you think that those people that are the what ifs, and I mean, that I call those the bullshit stories,
Mm-hmm.
like they truly sit on that, and then that becomes like their own burden,
Oh yeah.
and then they like almost shut down because
Mm-hmm.
of all of the uncertainty that is out there?
Yeah, so I have a transaction right now that not uncommon, like crawl spaces and attics are the tend to be two worst spots in a house, right? Because a seller doesn't typically go up in their attic or crawl into their crawl space. And so we had one and there was some microbial growth in the crawl space, right? And for me, I see it all the time. So like, I'm like, oh, that's like, we just get a restoration company in here. It's going to be taken care of, right? But for these buyers, it was like a extreme overwhelm. And then they had anxiety all weekend about like where else is in the house, what happens if it doesn't get fixed, all these types of things. And obviously had them come in and sat down, like went all over everything. And like they both said like their anxiety is like over the moon. And I again brought them back to let's just see what our options are. Let's talk to a restoration company. That's why there's restoration companies. I've seen the repairs before. I feel like it's an easy fix. This isn't what you do every day, but let's leave it to the professionals before we start to think of what happens if it doesn't get fixed? What happens if it can't be fixed? Like, it can be fixed. We just have to figure out what that's going to cost and what that's going to look like. So I think you're right. Like, they can almost, Mario, like, I don't want someone spending their weekend thinking about how the transaction is going to fall apart or this isn't the right house for them, when in all reality, it's a fix that can be taken care of and we all move on. So I think it's the ability to have those conversations with your clients like frank conversations as to, I know this is a lot for you to take on. These are our options. Let's not dwell on it for weeks at a time. Let's just figure out what the options are. And once you see them, you might feel perfectly fine to move forward, or you may not. And that's okay too.
And I feel like when you guide those types of individuals through the transaction, and again, they've never done it before, so they don't know.
Right.
Like for me, it goes back to you have three options. You can accept it, you can completely reject it, or let's negotiate it. Like, is this something that you're completely willing to accept on? It sounds like it's a no. Is it
Mm-hmm.
something that you're saying no, you don't want it, and this is a dead stop deal? You didn't say that, so let's see what we can negotiate and see where we're at, and just go down that pathway. And I
Right.
think when you always, like for me, when I always brought it all back to that 3 points of you can accept it, reject it, or negotiate, which one? And for each of the issues. And so they can start seeing, and it's almost like a process of elimination for them to help them dissect it a little bit easier and then come to the conclusion themselves of, oh, look, we're not still on the hook. We're seeing what's out there. And let's now identify when is the drop dead, like what is your absolute no. So if we get there, I can, signal the red flag that we need to have a stopping point and have another
Well,
discussion.
and I think the other thing too is sometimes trying to have those people put themselves like in the other, like put themselves in the seller's position. Like, what would you expect? What would you think? Right. So like in that situation, there were other minor things that were mentioned in the home inspection report. And then I just said, you got to take a step back. What's more important? Like, is this GFCI more important or is this crawl space more important? And I think there are some agents that just say like, you should just ask for the moon and the stars. Even like that client even said, like, do you think it's good if we just ask for everything to like overwhelm them and then they'll maybe come back with something in the middle? And I was like, I mean, that's not the way I would approach it. I would approach it with, these are the most realistic concerns that we have. And I think that if you're fair to begin with, that's what sellers are looking for. And so I think it's just that people are afraid to have those discussions with their clients, or they never want their clients to appear like upset with them or whatnot, where I think my clients prefer that I just tell it like it is. That's what I've found. And they appreciate that more in the long run versus then we wasted all this other time of non-essential negotiations, which was frustrating and overwhelming for everyone as well.
So we're talking a lot about, the blunt and to the point in transaction. What about in personal world? Like,
Hmm.
have you had issues with friends or acquaintances in the past saying, well, Ashley, you're just too damn blunt?
Hmm.
How do you handle those in a personal setting?
Well, we're probably not that good of friends anymore.
Fair.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, right. But I think that um, it's over time, like you find your people, right? And I'll be honest, like much like you, I wasn't always blunt. I used to keep a lot of things to myself. I used to stew on things. But at the end of the day, I guess, through growth and whatnot, I realized that that doesn't benefit me either. I'm not trying to change my mold to fit into someone else's form. Um, and I think that, I don't know, I mean, you see my bluntness, doesn't seem to bother you too much. Um, right. And I think that it's always done with the right intentions. Like I don't ever try to be blunt with someone to be mean or to be harmful, but we also need friends that are going to tell it like it is. I don't want the friend either that's going to always soothe the soul, right? And be like, oh, like how dare this happen or whatnot. Like I need the friends that are going to be like, do you think that that's really the case, or do you think maybe you're looking at it from the wrong angle? But I also think like in the long run, that's probably shifted some people out of my life that I didn't need in my life or weren't helping me grow. Where my friends now, I think like they come to me looking for support because they know that I'm not going to sugarcoat it for them. I'm not going to say like, oh, you're completely right. Yep, I would be upset too. I mean, I have a couple conversations where I'm like, no, like we are adults. Like we need to have those conversations. As much as that sucks, I know that you don't want to hear that from me, but I'm going to challenge you to have that conversation with so and so. So I think that on the personal level, it comes with time. And I think, again, like, I think you get better friendships when you can be frank with one another versus all of the fluff. There's always times for fluff, right? For birthdays and celebrations and all that stuff. But when we're talking about real life matters and things that are tough in life, I just don't think that being fluff gets us to helping those situations. But I mean, obviously, we all know and love Stephen Birch, and we know that he is to the point. So, how do you think that that has shaped your personal relationships?
Well, I honestly think that for me, being my true authentic self, like not trying to hide and, scale back or dim the light down of, well, let me not be, say what I truly think. Like it's the more that I step into being truly who I am, the more the better quality friendship relationships that I have around me. So, because I think again, like that field, it's almost like I'm thinking like a bubble, right? Like I'm completely in this bubble that I'm putting myself in, and the more that I can be me, like I'm lessening the amount of space in there, and I don't have to fill the space, fill the void, because I'm my true authentic self. I don't know if that made sense, but like I think it's better, right? Like, and also better. It may not be better for everybody else around me all the time, but it's better for myself, my mental
Mhm.
self being and self worth of who I am and whatnot. So I think it also has allowed me to see that I don't need to have everybody in my life like that on that level. Um, Again, not that I'm trying to be mean or anything. It just allows me to control the environment of I don't want to go down that space and be somebody that I'm not. I don't need to act and pretend. And if you don't like me, that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I saw this TikTok. I'll have to send it to you, but it was I don't know if you like watch any of the like Shaq and Charles Barkley stuff.
I haven't.
Okay. Well, you should because they're hilarious, right? Like they're two gentle giants, but they like say such inappropriate things, but it's always hilarious. So there was this one where Charles Barkley said something about I can't remember what he said, and so like the TV producers like called them all in at like 3 a.m. in the morning and basically told him that he needed to make an apology on air the next day. So that it was like live and everything. So he says, "Yep, I understand," or whatnot. So then they go live and he basically says, "You can kiss my ass. It's my opinion. If you don't like me, that's not my problem. That's on you. I'm telling it like it is." And like everyone, it's like Shaq telling the story from how everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, he did what?" But right, he was like unapologetically himself. Like he wasn't going to change just because some producer told him to. So I think we talk about, being authentic. And I also hope that at some point in time, like that rubs off onto the people, whether it's my coworkers, whether it's friends or family, but then they can see that they don't have to hide in some type of shell that they're used to. I always say, like, I think Jessica is a prime example. She started off as the quaint little, never says a word mouse, right? Not the case today, which we love her for, right? But I think that's because she was around others that are blunt and tell it like it is and want to get to the end goal faster. And I think that that's helped her, excel in her career.
Did I ever tell you about the time when I was there in your guys' office and Jessica had to give me a ride to your house?
I think, and then like you got in the car and our podcast was on.
Yes. And I heard our voices and I was like, what is happening in here? So, Jessica, I hope that you're listening right now and I can see your face getting beet red. And it was a great time, great memory. I appreciate it. But yeah, but like I think that's the goal as a leader, right? Like our job as leaders is to not have all of the answers to everything. Our job is actually to create an environment that allows everybody to come together and be heard and celebrated and grow together. So I think that the more that you can be authentic, truly yourself, helping and coming from a place of caring, compassion to build others, naturally will then create a company of very powerful people that have so much loyalty that they're never going to go anywhere else. Or if they do, you've impacted their life so much that it's going to be a very great step for them. So
I agree with that. I think the other point of that, and I had this discussion with someone last week, was that leaders don't always have to be the actual leader. So, like the leader of the company, right? There should be other leaders within, and leaders is a loose term of that. You might not be the broker owner, you might not be the CEO, but you're a leader within your company by the way that you do things, right? So, like if you are an agent and you see another agent being mistreated, or you're an agent and you're staying after hours to help with things at the office, right? Like those are leader type qualities that then you would hope that other people see and start to pick up and start to do those little things too. So I always encourage people, like, you don't have to be the leader to be a leader.
absolutely,
You just have to do the right thing.
it's a ripple effect, right? And I definitely, you saying that, like maybe it's not said enough. Like my goal is to create other leaders and within, our organization, our company, and anybody that, is around. And the expectation is for you to help others build them up as well. And, there's so many different scenarios and stories that are popping in my head now that you've said that, but we all are in different journeys in all of our lives, and we may experience some things and maybe not on others. But once you learn, I feel like it's your job to turn around and help the next person pull them up from where you once were and now get them where you are now. So yeah, leadership is not a title at all.
Right.
There's people out there that I know that have titles. I'm like, definitely not a leader, not doing it.
Right. Actions speak louder than words.
100%. So, well, if you were to give yourself advice now, knowing it's okay to be blunt, it's okay to be honest, it's okay not to dim your light. So, talk to Ashley 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What would be one piece of advice that you would give her?
Wow. I mean, I was a completely different person 10 years ago. I think if I had to think, and all the things that have happened, was to probably not be afraid to speak your mind. Because, someone said it to me the other day and I kind of sat on it for a while, but they said, you're normally quiet in meetings, like these are like board meetings or et cetera. But when you do speak, everyone listens. And I did take that to heart because, again, I think it's more of that fluff. Like, I'm not going to have these extra side conversations, but it is meaningful that then when I do speak, people know that it's serious, it's been thoughtful or whatnot. And I used to just hold all those thoughts back and keep them to myself. But I didn't get to where I am today by not speaking my mind or not standing up for things when I thought that there was injustices or things that needed to change. So I think that would have been probably the biggest thing, was to not be afraid to speak up.
No, I think that's great.
What about you? 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I think that mine would be that don't hold back, right? Like, don't dim your light, don't hold back. The more loud, vocal that you are, and I mean that in not like a showboaty way. The same as you, like, when you speak, you know that you're bringing true factual things to the table. So make sure that you are still coming again from that place of heart, but don't hold back. It's going to attract more people than it is going to push away. And those that are pushing away, get them away from you sooner. And don't
Exactly.
try to evolve to them, have them evolve to you.
Ideal.
So good topic. Love
Great.
it. Always so blunt. That's okay though. Well, thank you for listening to today's podcast. As always, if you have a topic or would like to be a guest on our podcast, reach out to us. We would love to have you.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Stay connected for more genuine insights and strategies to boost your real estate career on Facebook, or check out our website. We'll see you next time.